I want to make David a co-host.
What I do is to break up the Lord's Prayer into the parts of the body that Edgar Casey associated each part of the prayer with. It has to do with the endocrine system, the nervous system, and the chakra system. They all interact. And so I'll be touching parts of my body. I invite you to do it kind of like a mudra. And then we will wind up at the end more together in our unified energy. So let's, first of all, take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale and relax. Let's say the Lord's Prayer together, starting with touching our foreheads. Our Father, Mother, God, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Thy kingdom
Kingdom come,
Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation. Deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, and forever.
Amen.
This is a good time for us to remember some people in prayer before we move on. You can add the names, you speak out the names of other people in prayer if you'd like to at the right time. Sally Perry is going to have a knee replacement. My granddaughter Bella is living with Lisa and her family in Texas. I'd like to remember their family. Peter Panagore is starting a new ministry in a high security prison in Maine. A new ministry. I have a friend named Portia, and and Rebecca Castle, wife and husband at Bayview United Church of Christ, Lanny and Russell. Chatfield is their last name. The son of another member there is named Hack, and he's having problems with mental confusion and depression. Shirley Hooper. So those are the people I would like to remember in prayer. Let us pray. Wonderful God, thank you for all our blessings. We know one of them is that we can hold people in prayer, hold them in light and love, and they will receive the energy that we're sending. We're asking that you send your angels and guides, that you embrace them with us as we call them to name. Sally, Lisa, Bella, Peter, Portia, Rebecca, Lanny, Russell, and Hack, and Shirley. Are there others whom we would like to embrace with love and light?
Mommy, Sally, Ron Spiro,
Brenda Hoshua,
Joan Kennedy.
We envision the love and light that's within our ability to generate, surrounding all those whom we have mentioned. We think of our political leaders. We think of Donald Trump, the wife of Charlie Kirk and his daughter. All those who are suffering. Those in places where war is raging. We remember our police officers. We pray for their safety. We send out light and love to embrace the world. We envision the world being surrounded by light and love. We envision the influence of light and love tugging on everyone's consciousness. In Christ's name. And we pray in the name of Christ, knowing, Father, Mother God, that you can do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think. Amen.
Amen.
We'd like to introduce everybody who's present. In addition to myself and Francis, we have Kathy. You put the camera, there's Kathy.
Hi.
Okay.
Kathy.
And Peggy. Terry.
Hi.
Jeff. Hey, David. And Tom.
How you doing?
Okay. And on Zoom, top left, we have Pam.
Hi.
And top right is Anne Marie.
Hi.
Bottom left is Mary Kay. And bottom right is Susan. All right, we don't see your face, Susan. And in the bottom of the middle is David, who's going to be our speaker tonight. We'd like to offer this as an opportunity for anybody that has anything to share it with the group. Who will be first? I think we're all anxious to hear David. So I'm going to pin David and let David take it away.
Okay, what's a good time frame?
We usually end our meeting around 8:30.
I mean, like, how long do you want me to talk for? I can make it as short or as long as you'd like.
You can fill the whole time from now till 8:30 and even a little bit beyond if you want, because people will have questions and you'll have the answers.
Okay, so we did, I think, about an hour with IANs, and so maybe we'll go a little slower and in depth into a few things. And I kind of had to move fast through the material for IANs, but we've got a little more time here. So if everybody's okay, maybe an hour 20 and then open it up for questions.
Sounds good.
All right, let me see if I can get my presentation up here. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
And let's see if I can, that didn't work out.
Wow, look at that.
That's beautiful.
There we go. Okay, so some of these pics are just pics I got off the internet. Basically, this talk is sort of the subject of the second book that I'm working on right now that's coming out in December. And anybody in this group or on the Zoom call when December rolls around, if you're interested in it, don't spend money, just send me an email. My contact information is at the end of the presentation, and I'll send you a free PDF copy of the book. But it talks about humanity's future. Now, the reason I wanted to get this information out there is because really, when you look around at the world today, there's such negativity about the future. And it seems like everything's falling apart. And what I found in near-death experience research is the exact opposite, that we are headed towards a sort of a utopian future, a planet of peace and love. It's going to happen very quickly from a cosmic perspective, but from our perspective, very slowly. We're about 150 years away from it. And so we're going to talk today about some of the stuff that I've heard in my research. I started researching near-death experiences in 2007 when I clicked on a YouTube video. Now, what happened was in 1999, I came down with chronic tendonitis, and it started in my hands, it moved to my feet, my jaw, and it became debilitating. And by 2007, after 8 years of chronic pain, no doctors could cure me, I became extremely depressed, and I had lost my faith in God completely. I was a Christian at that time. And I still hold on to a lot of Christian values just because I think they get so much right. Any religion focused on love, I think, is on the right track. And anyway, I clicked on a YouTube video about an atheist. It just came up in my feed. And YouTube was fairly new back then. And it was about an atheist who died, saw the afterlife, and returned. And that got me started on 18 years of research into near-death experiences. And I lost count now of how many I've heard. It's probably closer to 15, 1,800, I don't know. But I stopped counting after my book, so the 1,200 is only an estimate. But it really changed my life. It changed the way I deal with people. It changed my relationships, healed my relationship with my family, restored my faith in God. And I spent most of my life dealing with depression and, waking up being angry at the world. And now it's the exact opposite. I have a few days where I wake up and I'm mad at the world or depressed for whatever reason. But the vast majority of my days, I have joy and peace. And really, it was those testimonies that sort of transformed me and turned me into a different person. My own family members said, they almost didn't recognize me because I changed so much. And that's what spirit does to you, no matter whether you've had a near-death experience or you're just a spiritual awakening or just studying certain spiritual things. It transforms people. And it's a really beautiful what it does to people. So I kind of put together a book. That's what I did a lot of the research for, called God Took My Clothes, which is just Spirituality 101. It's an overview of what near-death experiencers say. And that was an easy gig. 700 people at that time. I'd only heard 700 testimonies. And I basically summarized what these guys say. Well, trying to talk about the future is very difficult because only a few, small percentage, less than 5% of testimonies they were shown or told things about the future, and the future can always change. And free will is the highest law of spirituality. And so anytime there's talk about the future, it's the likely potential future. Because if I'm driving, for instance, 60 miles an hour north on the 5 freeway in California, you would say, well, an hour from now, you're going to be 60 miles north. So you'll be right here. But I can stop or turn around or slow down or speed up. And the prevailing sentiment for a long time with humanity is we were on a path towards self-destruction. So Nostradamus, Revelation, Mother Shipton, all these people who saw the future, they were correct based on the prevailing sentiment where it looked like we were going. But thanks to a lot of help from above, and I'm not just talking about heaven, but certain benevolent alien species, we passed a marker sometime back in 1989. There's no set point, but it was right around there. And now we are on an inevitable path towards becoming an ascended planet where we live with each other and with nature in peace and harmony. So we're not going to destroy ourselves. Climate change is not going to destroy the world. There's not going to be a mass extinction of human beings. There's not going to be an Armageddon. That's where we were headed, but it was avoided. And what I heard was kind of interesting. There was a big celebration in the galaxy because many thought that those who were watching over us, the Pleiadians, what they were doing was too risky. They were letting us dip too far into darkness. And no planet in the history of this galaxy has sunk so far into darkness without destroying themselves. We were the first ones that sunk that far, and now we're springing out towards the light. And the further you sink into darkness, the higher you spring into the light. And so there's a benefit to experiencing contrast. Consciousness learns through contrast. So you experience a lot of darkness, and now the light and the love grows that much more. So anyway, let's get into it. Little disclaimer. Most of the cases I heard, there were no dates given, so it's really hard to put dates together. And there's no set timeline, so things can happen a little faster or slower than the things that I'm talking about here in this presentation. It's not an infallible prediction. As I said, free will is the highest law of spirituality, so certain aspects can change, but there's one thing that will not change. We are definitely 100%, without a doubt, not destroying ourselves as a species. We're going to make it this time. What I've heard is this was the 5th try. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but apparently we tried 4 times before to evolve and become an ascended planet. We didn't make it. We destroyed ourselves. Now, a lot of the things that I'm talking about in this presentation seem absurd. And really, if you want to make great leaps in learning, you have to not just have some intelligence, but you have to be able to contemplate the absurd. Now, what do I mean by that? I'll give you a few examples. In 1912, Alfred Wegener first suggested that the continents were slowly drifting across the surface of the earth. Now, he was laughed at by the scientific community. Continents drifting, come on. He turned out to be right. In 1841, when Richard Owen was examining large bone and teeth fragments, he speculated there were once giant lizards that roamed the earth that he called Dinosauria. And he was laughed at. Everybody thought it was a hoax for money or fame. And of course, dinosaurs turned out to be a real thing. And over 500 years ago, a very brilliant scientist worked out the geometry, and he speculated something that seemed absolutely insane. He had to delay the publishing of his book until after his death because the Catholic Church was threatening to excommunicate him, and he would have lost his funding. He would have been thrown out of social circles. And basically what he said was the earth isn't the center of the universe with the sun and stars revolving around us. We're going around the sun at 90 miles a second. Now, he was laughed at that point. They thought he was, the mad, crazy scientist who had lost it. That man was Nicholas Copernicus. So keep in mind, as you hear these things, they may sound crazy. And being an engineer, I am skeptical by nature. And it took hearing a lot of testimonies and a lot of information for me to believe these things that I'll be presenting today. So keep an open mind as you see this stuff. Just because it sounds crazy doesn't mean it's not true and it's not going to happen. So near-death experiences, we'll just give a brief overview because most of you are real familiar with NDEs already. They're nothing new. The Egyptian prayer of resurrection here is over 2,000 years old. Death is but a doorway to new life. We live today, we shall live again. In many forms shall we return. And we have other ancient writings. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, over 1,500 years old, says a gleaming white light will shine from the heart of God that's so beautiful you can't turn your eyes away. I mean, they're describing what sounds like those who have near-death experiences experience. So what happens in an NDE? A person comes out of their body, either an accident or a surgery gone wrong in the hospital. They see themselves from above and they get revived. That's the most common one. More extensive ones, they see a light, they get attracted to it like a magnet. They go to heaven. Some meet dead relatives, spirit guides. Some meet God, Jesus, Buddha, all sorts of religious characters. Some are given a choice to go back. Others are told they have to. They describe heaven as remembering this place. Oh, this is home. This is where I came from. People ask those who have had NDEs, were you like a ghost? And they say, no, I was the opposite of a ghost. I felt more real and more alive than I've ever felt in my life. It's the height of consciousness. You're just filled up with life. So when you're dreaming, you think that your dream world is real. It's only when you wake up when you realize, oh, that dream world was not very real at all. This is the real world. Well, imagine taking one huge step higher in consciousness. The difference between the dream world and our world, one more huge step, and that's how the afterlife is. No one doubts, out of all those who have had near-death experiences, nobody doubts, which world is real. Nobody says, well, that was just a hallucination or a dream. They know that's the real world. They remember, oh, this is where I came from. This is my home. Now, it's kind of interesting to see NDEs becoming mainstream. When I started my research, I would look every day on YouTube for a near-death experience testimony, and I might find one a month, maybe one or two a month. And now there's more channels than I can keep track of. And you'll even hear about it in the movies, right? Don't go towards the light, Jim. So they know society is becoming aware that this is a real thing. Now, before we move on to the main part of the presentation, I want to address a question that comes up quite often. We know that from NDEs, it's all about love. Every kind act, every gentle thought, every unselfish deed becomes a pillar of beauty in this world and the one to come. But if heaven is such a wonderful, beautiful, blissful place, what are we doing here suffering? I've heard from near-death experiences that Earth is the hardest planet in this galaxy in which to have a life, and it's one of 3 hardest in the universe. It's a really tough place. What are we doing down here? Well, as I mentioned, consciousness learns through contrast. No pain, no gain, no challenges, no growth. In the perfect environment of heaven, nothing changes. And so A few brave souls have to leave the comfort and bliss of their heavenly home, come down to earth and have a human experience and forget our nature, forget that we're connected, forget that we're part of God, and experience this fear love duality. And we are a critical part of the engine of growth of God, the fractal of creation. Near-death experiences have been told if it were not for souls incarnating into physical existences, the bubble of love of heaven could not continue to exist and grow. So we have a really tough job down here, but it's a really important one. And we are honored in heaven as the brave souls. So if you had a business card as a soul, it would say something like, daredevil soul, expert at transforming fear-based planets into utopian paradises. So that's what we're doing down here. It's a tough job, but someone had to do it. And those of you listening to this right now were the ones that raised their hands and said, I'll go. I'll do the tough work because I love my heavenly family. So I salute everyone down here on planet Earth for being part of the engine of growth of creation. So where are we right now? We are just coming out of what would be known in the future as the Barbaric Age. Near-death experiencers often say things like, I was shown or told or I saw that there was a perfect plan of creation and it's working itself out in its perfection. Now, the first few times I heard this, I thought to myself, what? Have you been to Earth? A perfect plan? This place is a mess. We're trashing our environment. We're fighting each other. We got war. We've got this division in politics and corporations running crazy with greed and narcissism and war and fighting. It's just a mess. Well, any change is chaotic. If you had a house that was in your family for generations, big mansion, and now the wood's rotten and the roof has holes in it and the plumbing's leaky and the electrical's faulty, and the bulldozers have to come to knock it over because you have to make way for a bigger, better house that's going to serve your family going into the future. If you don't know what's coming, the day the bulldozers come and knock the house over, it's going to seem like the end of the world. But nothing could be further from the truth. We are making way for a better world that's going to serve us in the centuries to come. So, where are we right now? We have the illusion of separateness. So, what do I mean by that? Well, in heaven, we're all connected. Now, down here on earth, we have the illusion of separateness, but it's just an illusion. So, it gives us an opportunity. In other words, human beings, every soul has a free will. Now, I can kick my cat or I can pet my cat, but what if I'm connected to the cat? Even though I have the free will to kick the cat, I really can't do that because I'm going to feel the pain of the kick. But if I have the illusion of separateness, I can make that choice. I can choose between fear and love. And so in this illusion of separateness, because we don't realize that when you harm another human being, you harm the whole, what we did for thousands and thousands of years, there's been a paradigm. We would form groups, so you would attach yourself to a group, whether it was a strong family, like an extended family, or a city, a powerful city, or an army, or something as big as the Roman Empire. And then you made yourself as strong as possible, and you went out, you took from others by force. That's what you did to survive. And that was the norm. And the attitude was, well, if you didn't do this, you're a fool. I mean, do you want to be a victim? Do you want to survive and thrive? Which is it? And so this is the way things were. There's a new paradigm, and humanity really hasn't woken up to it yet. With our technology, with our amazing communication skills, the way we communicate right now, and with our cell phones, with our mass manufacturing and satellites and all of the modern technologies, the new paradigm is this: we don't have to fight each other. There is enough for everyone. But we have about 2,500 very wealthy families, the sort of 1%ers that you've heard about that are sort of pulling the strings. They're in fear, they have to stay in control, and they're getting more and more aggressive, and they're losing their grip. They know they've lost the battle, they're in denial about it, And so they're trying to maintain the old system, and humanity's moving in a different direction. So they've lost the battle. They just don't know it yet. And so any change that comes about is going to be chaotic, especially when it's fast. And 150 years is a fast change. In fact, the changes are going to be so dramatic that if an alien were to come and who had never been to planet Earth, and he looked at it today, he would look around and say, yeah, you guys are going to kill yourselves. You're not going to make it. You got all these nuclear weapons. You're trashing your environment. You're not cooperating. You're going to kill yourselves. And then if he came back 150 years and now his jaw would drop. What did these human beings do? How did they clean up their act so fast? They turned this mess of a planet into a utopian paradise. The whole galaxy is going to learn from what we're doing right now. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the old tools. Religion is an old tool to connect with God. It's structured and it's got its flaws. How does God see religion? Well, God kind of sees religion the way we see our children. You know, each one connects with us in a different way. One may show love by doing a drawing and say, here, I made this for you, mommy. Another one say, well, I want to help you do this chore, dad. And another one may run up and get their parent a hug. And it's okay if all your kids showed you love in the same way, but I think God sees sort of a beauty in the way the different religions honor him. And the best analogy I ever heard was from Lee Carroll when he channeled Cryon. And he said, the way God sees religion is, imagine if you were in a bitter divorce and out of spite, your spouse gains custody of your two young children and says, I'm taking them far away. You're never going to see your kids again. And you're heartbroken. You lose contact with your children. And you look for years and years and years, and you give up in despair. And now 15 years has passed. And they're 20-year-old young adults. And one day the phone rings, and it's them. And they say, we've been looking for you all these years. We're in your neighborhood right now. Can we come and see you? Of course, that's the happiest day of your life. And you run outside and you wait there on the street. And 5 minutes passes and there's a car coming down the street. It's them. It's your children. Now, let me ask you something. Do you care what kind of car it is? Do you care if it's a broken down old car with lots of problems or a brand new car in perfect condition? No, you don't care. You're happy your kids are coming to see you. God does not care if a person is in a messed up religion with a lot of screwed up doctrines and mistaken beliefs. He's happy his children are trying to connect with him. And it doesn't matter what tool you use. Some people need the structure of organized religion to connect with God. And so when you see somebody in religion, you know, near-death experiences have asked up in heaven, they go, well, I have a brother who, you know, he's Catholic or Jewish or a Muslim, and, you know, he's got these beliefs now that I know aren't true. What do I do? And God says, leave them alone. They're where they're supposed to be. So I find that fascinating, how loving and open God is. Where are we right now? We see a lot of dysfunction in politics. Have you ever seen politics so divisive in this country? And it's getting worse, not only here, but in other countries as well. Corporations are sort of out of control with their greed. They're designing products to fail. They don't have the best interest of people in mind. They're playing all sorts of dirty games to unfairly separate people from their money. It's a mess right now. And it's because they haven't woken up to the new paradigm yet. They don't realize that when you harm society by making a product built to fail, built to have a person buy it over and over again, that's harmful to the whole. So it's going to take a while for corporations to wake up. The old energy right now, those in power are resisting change. The wars we're seeing is sort of the last gasp of the old power trying to maintain control, and they're losing their grip, and they know it. So we are in the beginning of a great awakening right now. We're seeing podcasts, like I put a few examples up here, some of the bigger podcasts where they're talking about near-death experiences and spiritual concepts. We're in the new energy that I mentioned earlier. And it seems like a lot of stuff is getting worse, but that's only because a lot of dark behavior, a lot of evil that was always hidden is now being exposed. Well, why is this happening? Well, a person who can't even afford a place to live, who's living out in the streets, they have a cell phone. The poorest people in society can communicate with the whole world. When any individual can communicate with the rest of the world, you're not going to keep things secret anymore. So we have all sorts of whistleblowers and garbage coming to the surface. And as these problems come to the surface, they're going to be dealt with. We don't need to focus on them. You know, one of the scariest things I ever heard in my research was that most conspiracy theories are true. Oh my goodness. But it does not help to focus on that stuff. It does not help bring about world peace to focus on all that evil. So the best thing to do is just to ignore that stuff and, you know, do what your group is doing, which is to focus on love and goodness and kindness and making the world a better place. And we are great manifestors. Buddha said, be careful what you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. And so as you focus on the positive things, you are accelerating the coming of this new world of love that's just starting. And you're accelerating the great awakening. So I applaud all those who are on the side of light. The changes are going to be painful. Consciousness does not turn on a dime like a hockey skater. It's more like a cruise ship. It's going to take a while to turn this boat around and to leave old habits behind. You know, we've got cutthroat competition, and it's going to take a while for it to be replaced by loving cooperation. You know, we have these ideas that we hold on to, and it's really holding us back. When I wrote my book, at that time, there was 5 times as many empty homes in the United States as there were homeless people. And when you say that, people go, well, who's going to pay for those homes? Well, you know, that's just accounting. You know, if we're a society and we really care about everybody, we'll find a way to make it work, but we're not there yet. We're not cooperating yet. So we're going to go through a lot of painful changes, and a lot of these lessons are going to have to be learned by force. Now, what do I mean by that? I'll give you an example. When my uncle was 14 years old, my grandfather caught him smoking a cigarette. So he took him into the basement and he made him smoke cigarette after cigarette after cigarette. And a lot of people don't know this, but if you take too much nicotine, you get sick and you throw up. And that's exactly what happened. He never touched another cigarette again for the rest of his life. And we're going to learn our lessons, a lot of them the hard way, where we get our back against the wall and we say, enough is enough. We have to start cooperating with each other. So that's kind of what we're going to be going through. Part of the changes is there's going to be some quantum leaps, literally. Right now, we do not have the ability to measure and manipulate quantum multidimensional energies. And the reason is we're not mature enough yet. You don't give a knife to a 2-year-old because he's going to hurt himself with it. So a knife can be used, it's a tool, it can be used for good or evil. It can be used to stab somebody and rob their wallet or purse, or it can be used to prepare food for people in a kitchen, for the homeless. And it's the same with quantum energy. It's too easily weaponized. So we will not be given the ability to measure and manipulate quantum energies until we're mature enough to handle it, until we're at a point where we won't weaponize it. But when we do, when we have that, there's going to be a couple things that happen. The first is we're all of a sudden going to realize, just like a primitive society in an island somewhere in the Pacific that nobody knew was slowly developing, and they thought they were alone in the world, and they developed a radio. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, we've got this shortwave radio. There's all these people. And that's what's going to happen. They communicate via quantum communication because it's instantaneous. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. The spin on one quantum entangled particle changes, and the other entangled particle changes instantaneously, regardless of the distance. You know, it takes 9 minutes for light to go from Earth to the sun. You can't communicate across the galaxy. It would take too long. Well, I think it's like 22 minutes to send a message to Mars, and that's in our neighborhood. So we're going to, all of a sudden, when we get this quantum communication, we're going to be talking with aliens, and we're going to form partnerships with them and friendships. We're going to become aware that nature is alive. Trees are alive. You know, in the future, we're not going to cut down a tree, which is a living sentient being, to make our houses out of. That's barbaric. We're going to learn from nature. It's already happening. They are learning to regreen deserts. You can see the before and after picture here in the lower right-hand corner. They're taking old methods of putting water capture mechanisms in, and they restore the groundwater, and then you get springs and rivers, and these deserts turn into forests or grasslands. There's efforts in place right now where they are taking domesticated herds and they're mimicking the migration of the old herds, because when they would trample down the grass and then their excrement would fertilize it, it helped keep those areas healthy. And without those herd animals, like the buffalo that used to be prevalent in the United States, they're kind of gone now. The nature is suffering, and there's efforts now to bring that back with domesticated herds. We're going to start communicating telepathically with plants and animals. And we're going to do things like have a garden and say, okay, insects and animals, don't touch the human garden. You insects and animals, we're going to have this separate garden for you where we're going to grow the stuff you like, and you eat stuff in that garden. We won't need pesticides. We won't need fertilizers. A plant will tell us when it's thirsty and what nutrients it needs. And it sounds like crazy stuff, but I've heard this in the near-death experiences. We'll be able to tell plants to grow the food faster. We would like you to accelerate, growing these tomatoes, things like that. It sounds crazy, but it's true. And once we start cooperating with nature, it's going to be a huge jump. It's going to be a huge change in our society. There are going to be young people being born. It's already happening. Remember past lives. Wisdom from ancient cultures, the Lemurians, the Atlanteans, who had technologies that we lost, are going to be remembered, and they're going to be brought back. And so all these changes are going to start happening, and it's really going to help us as a society. First contact, that's coming pretty soon. Word on the street is within the next 5 years. Some are saying within 2 years. There's no set timeline. 50 years ago, if a spaceship landed on the White House lawn, would they have been met with smiles and hugs and flowers and handshakes? Or would there have been a military response? I think we all know the answer to that one. Today, I'm not so sure there'd be a military response, but we're still too jumpy. We're still too shooty. I mean, if you moved into a new neighborhood and the neighbor said to you, hey, you see that guy across the street? He spends 1/3 of his money on weapons and guns and military gear. And if he doesn't know you and you knock on the door, he's going to show up with his gun at his side, ready to go. He doesn't trust you. Did you knock on his door to meet him? Probably not. I just described the U.S. government. 1/3 of our income on military, and if the spaceship landed somewhere in a government facility, there would be a military response. We're not ready yet, but we're getting there. Now, they're not going to land a spaceship on the White House lawn. Pleiadians, who are our cosmic parents, they've been through first contact situations before. They know what to do and what not to do. They're not going to show up in mass all of a sudden. That's going to cause a panic in worldwide economies and crash economies. And so what they're going to do is they're going to show up on an individual basis. They'll land in a park, where there's maybe 100 people or something like that. And then they'll land next to a schoolyard. And then when everyone's either seen them themselves or they've know somebody who's had the experience and we're all aware of it, then they'll start talking to us publicly. They'll invite us to be a member of the galactic community. They're not going to share all their technology with us because we would destroy ourselves with it. That doesn't help a developing species to do that. But they will give us a complete record of our history. And it's going to be surprising. We're going to have to rewrite our history books because it's quite a bit different than what we've got right now. They will be able to give us any technology any human being currently possesses or has had in the past. So if there's some scientist in some third world country that's had this great invention, they'll be able to share that with us because it's ours. They'll be able to give us a copy of all of Tesla's work. that was taken from the hotel room when he died by the US government, things like that. They've got the technology to clean up our entire planet in less than a month, but they're not going to do it for the same reason you don't clean up your child's room for them. They've got to learn to clean up their own room. So they'll kind of act as a guide, a limited basis, but they're really going to be there just to kind of help us out. They're not going to come here to save us. We've got to save ourselves, which we will do with their help, with help from heaven. One of the big steps in this whole process is going to be peace on earth. Now, I've heard we're about, somewhere between 30 and 50 years away from peace on earth. And people think that's sort of an end game. No, that's just the first step. Once we stop fighting each other, then things are going to really get interesting. Imagine a world where no country needs a military. All of a sudden the US would have an extra $1 trillion a year to spend on useful things instead of, $7 million for an Abrams M1 tank whose only purpose is to destroy. An F-35 jet fighter cost $100 million. I mean, it's a monstrosity of war that should not exist in this world. And those things are going to be going away. There's going to be a Department of Compassion in the federal government. Now, when I heard this, I thought, oh, come on, no way. That's what they say is coming. There's going to be anti-war technologies developed, quantum fields that form sort of a bubble over a city that prevents certain chemical reactions from taking place, like gunpowder or nuclear reactions. What's going to happen when we can't blow each other up or shoot each other anymore? We're going to have to find peaceful ways to work out our differences. As we become a family, people think we're going to be all, that as an ascended species, we're all going to be holding hands singing Kumbaya. No, we're still going to have our differences, but we're going to be like a family that loves each other. Brothers and sisters may get so mad at each other that they're not talking to each other and not cooperating, but they're not going to pick up guns and knives and start killing each other. And that's where we're headed, where we will never use violence to resolve our differences. We're going to learn to respect each other's cultures and respect each other's religions. And I think this is so important too, because look at religion. So many of the world's major religions focus on a lot of the same things: brotherly love, charity for the impoverished, kindness, gentleness, compassion, forgiveness, self-control. We're all more on the same page than we are separate. And religion's going to mature. It's not going to go away. It's going to mature. 500 years ago, the Catholic Church was selling indulgences. Pay us money and the clergy will pray for your dead relative to get to heaven. Pay money to get into heaven? They don't do that anymore. Even 50 years ago, I would not have heard in Catholic Church what I heard just recently. My wife is Catholic, and the preacher recently talked about the story of the prodigal son who takes away half his inheritance, the father's inheritance, and he goes out and blows it. And he comes back starving and says, Father, make me one of your servants. And the father says, no, you're my son, accepts him back. And you know what this Catholic priest said was the moral of that story? He said, you see, God's not going to judge you for being bad. He loves you no matter what you do. My jaw dropped. I would not have heard that 50 years ago in Catholic school when I was a child. So religions are maturing and cultures are maturing. And that's going to continue. We're going to become a gentler, kinder species. And it's taking some time. And some of the old generation is going to have to die out, but it's happening. And a big part of that is bringing in a balance of male and female energy. Now, you will hear things like in social circles, toxic masculinity. Well, there's no such thing. What people are realizing is there's a toxic imbalance of male energy. So if you have too much female energy and that female energy is dominant on a planet, that planet will die out through stagnation. If you have too much male energy, it's out of balance with an overabundance of male energy, the planet will extinguish itself through a combination of war and environmental disaster. Well, it doesn't take a genius to see where we are. We've got too much male energy. And the reason for that is because tens of thousands of years ago, before recorded history, women were in charge of the planet. They're more connected to the divine, more connected to their emotions, because the men were hunters and the animals can sense fear. So the men had to be disconnected from their emotions. to be able to hunt the animals. And so women propagated the species, so they were considered the important ones, the ones in charge. And men were treated like slaves to do the grunt work and breeding stock. And they rebelled. And so we tried women in charge, and that didn't work. And now we tried men in charge, and that didn't work. And now we're coming back into balance. And so now about 25% of the leaders of the world and corporate board members are women. And as we come back into a 50-50 balance, it's really going to help out the planet. Because let's face it, most women would not send their sons and daughters to die on the battlefield. We have war because there's too many men and too much male energy. Because women will tend to find peaceful ways to work out the differences. So we're going to have a lot of help as we learn to respect each other, respect the balance between male and female energy. And both is needed. It's a partnership. And it's only the imbalance that's toxic. The male energy is not toxic. It's kind of interesting. I asked ChatGPT what's going to happen when humanity achieves peace on Earth, and this is what ChatGPT said. Once humanity steps into peace, cooperation will unleash a rapid flowering of progress. Wars will no longer drain resources, so energy, science, and creativity will turn towards healing the planet, ending poverty, and expanding consciousness. Balanced leadership between men and women will bring compassion into governance, while spiritual awakening will foster unity across cultures and religions. Technology will be guided by ethics and service rather than profit and war, and humanity will begin to live in harmony with nature and with one another, stepping into its role as a peaceful and enlightened member of the greater cosmic family. How the heck did ChatGPT know this? I'll tell you why. Artificial intelligence will always reflect the consciousness of the culture it created. And humanity at some subconscious level, at a conscious level for groups like this, are aware of this truth. And because a lot of us put this information out on the internet, ChatGPT did a great job summarizing it. And this is exactly what I've heard in my research. So one of the big efforts we're going to have is cleaning up. We have really made a mess of the planet. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is climate change. And I just cringe when I have to talk about this, or when I'm on a guest on one of the channels that I do a lot of guest appearances on, channels online. I've done a few radio appearances, and I cringe when they ask me this question because people get really mad at me. But this is just what I've heard from heaven. Okay, this isn't me. This is what I've heard. Humanity is not driving climate change. Oh, we're affecting the climate, but it's going to change whether we're affecting it or not. Now, before you shut down mentally and say, this guy's lost me, I'm on your side. I drive a Nissan Leaf, a 100% electric vehicle. I grow some of my own food. I recycle, I repurpose. My wife and I do a neighborhood cleanup. I mean, I've got all LED bulbs in my house. I'm doing everything I can to reduce the burning of fossil fuels because I think we need to do it as soon as possible. But it's not the emergency that society talks about. It's like a big truck rolling down a hill. You know, you can get in front of it and slow it down a little, or you get behind it and push it, make it go faster, but it's going to that bottom of the hill no matter what. So, yes, we're all eventually going to need to stop burning fossil fuels. Nobody thinks we need to do it by the end of the year, and nobody thinks we should still be burning fossil fuels 200 years from now. So we're all in agreement we need to stop. It's just how fast. Well, we will stop. And the reason I mentioned this whole thing about climate change, because there's so much fear. And when you focus on fear, you create more of the thing you're afraid of. So the more human beings focus on the fear of that climate change can kill us and damage the planet, the more damage it's going to do before it reverses. But it's not going to kill us. That's the word from heaven. In the future, there's going to be a massive worldwide campaign. It's almost going to be like a religious cult with the climate and with environmentalism. There's going to be massive efforts to clean up the air, soil, and water. The Great Pacific Plastic Patch the word from heaven is there's going to be a massive effort in the future, and they're going to clean it up. They're going to get rid of those plastic in the ocean. They're going to use nanotechnology to create clean water from ocean water. Right now, it's very expensive. It's very energy intensive through things like reverse osmosis. But we're going to develop clean, energy efficient ways to create clean water, which is going to be a bigger problem as time goes on. And of course, the biggest problem, way bigger than climate change, this is the word from heaven, is genetically modified organisms. So most of the processed food products in a store that you'll go to, a grocery store, most of those have GMOs. 90% of the corn is GMO. And it's basically what Monsanto did is they have this stuff called Roundup it's an herbicide and pesticide. So it kills all plants and animals. And they used to spray it on their crops and it would kill everything in the field. And now the field's clean and it'd take about 6 weeks to dissipate and wash away. And then they would plant the crops. Well, they found bacteria growing in their toxic waste dump of Roundup. And they thought, well, this is supposed to kill everything. So what did they do? They spliced the genes of this bacteria with certain plants. And they created plants that create their own toxins that kill the bugs and other plants. Well, if it's killing bugs, how good is it for us? Unfortunately, the word from heaven is GMOs are going to make human beings sterile in 3 generations, but they're illegal in over 70 countries. And long before it causes mass extinction, we're going to wake up to this and we're going to have a massive effort to clean GMOs out of the food supply. So GMOs is the biggest thing that's threatening the health of human beings right now. And it's causing cancer and, a whole list of health problems, most of which we aren't aware of. And so if you want to avoid GMOs right now, most organic foods are non-GMO. And any seeds you buy, those little packets of seeds you buy in the store, you don't have to look for non-GMO. Bayer purchased Monsanto and they have a patent on those seeds, and that patent is too expensive. And so all the seeds sold in stores for your gardening, those are all non-GMO because all the GMO seeds are patented and it would be too much money to sell those little packets. So if you want to do your own gardening and reduce GMOs, just buy any seeds in any packets in the store, you're safe. We talked about the regreening of deserts. There's going to be return to organic farming. We have about a third of the world right now on this industrial farming, and it kills the soil. It's unhealthy, and there's going to be return to things like companion planting, where you plant 2 or 3 different plants together, and they kind of give each other nutrients that they need. Not disturbing spiders in the garden because that's your pest control. Natural ways to keep pests out, things like citrus spray and things like that. There's going to be a whole return, and we're going to get rid of all this chemical-based industrial farming. But luckily, about 2/3 of the world is still on natural farming. So it's only in Western civilizations and cultures where we have a lot of this industrial farming, which is really bad for the environment. And the food that it produces is not good for us. Monocultures are not good. And if anybody is interested in learning more about this, Dr. Vandana Shiva knows a lot about it. She's got food banks in various places in the world. And she is one of the foremost experts in natural farming and even gives classes. And people come from all over the world to learn about that in her classes. I think she's in India right now. We come to a part of the presentation that's near and dear to my heart. I am a power plant engineer. I'm semi-retired, but I still do consulting on 15 small power plants on the island of Oahu. The next big thing with renewable is going to be low temperature geothermal. The renewable we have right now is not very good. I'm a power plant manager and analyst, and I can tell you, I've run the numbers. There's a propaganda in governments and in certain environmental circles saying that solar and wind are cheaper and they're clean. They're cleanish, and they're about double to triple the cost. And they're not very good solutions because the sun's not out 24/7 and it's not windy 24/7. And so anytime you see a wind farm or a big solar plant Those have to have a fossil fuel backup. And the wind farm materials are not very recyclable. There's toxic materials in the photovoltaic cells. It's just not good. So low temperature geothermal is going to be the next big thing. That's going to be a big jump. It's going to be clean. It's going to be cheap. And we just have to develop the technology. But that's coming. Now we're about 30 years away from something called 0-point energy. Now, forgetting anything I've heard from heaven or near-death experiences or anything like that, I'm going to just talk about what our scientists can tell you. In 1 cubic feet of space, there is enough 0-point energy to run the United States for a year. It's an almost limitless source. For all practical purposes, it's limitless. And some near-death experiences have seen these little boxes in the houses and little boxes in the cars that use this plasma to access 0-point energy. And they run cleanly for almost no money, no maintenance for 50, 100 years. No more distributed wires and transmission lines going through the desert. That's all going away. We're all going to have locally produced power that's going to be darn near free. And so that's exciting. We're not ready for that yet because that uses multidimensional quantum energy, and it's too easily weaponized. So it's going to be a while before we have that. So the new Earth. There is a big battle going on right now. And I'm not talking about Illuminati or secret societies or anything like that. I'm just talking about wealthy families. There's about 2,500 of these very wealthy families. There's companies like Vanguard and BlackRock and I think State Street. And if you pull up any major stock and look at who the biggest shareholders are, you're going to see those 3 companies. And so the owners of the central banks of the world create money out of thin air and then loan it to governments, and we have to pay it back with interest. They can kind of buy anything they want. They're kind of running the world. And they have this vision of the future. They see themselves as like the pharaohs of old, born to rule, smarter than the rest of us. And they even spelled out their future in these things called the Georgia Guidestones. Some of you may be familiar with them. There were these big stone monuments. Nobody was sure who put them up, but they spelled out the globalist agenda, one world government, one world court, reducing the world population to 500 million people, all this stuff that society doesn't want. And they were recently blown up, which is symbolic. They're losing their grip on society. And this is kind of interesting, this next item, Project Looking Glass. Now, this is hearsay stuff. I haven't heard anything directly from near-death experiences about Project Looking Glass, but I've heard from channeled entities and whistleblowers who have nothing to do with spirituality, and I did my best to put all this information together. Basically, what happened was an alien craft crashed, and their navigation, they have these navigation chairs, which they sort of communicate with the artificial intelligence chip, and it uses a quantum-based energy. And they took this chair and they modified it. And in this field, it's magnetic fields intersecting with each other at right angles, very high frequency, very high voltage, within an argon matrix. And that is the secret to these quantum-based energies. Tesla 3 times saw items go from his lab and hit the ceiling because he figured out how to change the mass of an object to 0 with these magnetic fields interacting, but he didn't have the computers to calibrate and recreate it. He died frustrated. That's what I heard from heaven. But Project Looking Glass, the globalists took this, and what they would do is they'd have a person sit in this little environment that sort of gave them a window into the future, and they say, okay, we're going to do this. What are the results? And then they'd see what the results were in society. Oh, that's not what we wanted. Here, try focusing on what if we did this. And when they got the results they wanted, that's what they would do. And so they have been manipulating humanity for a very long time. Well, Project Looking Glass stopped working. No matter what they did, they saw a future where they lost power. So they brought a few experts in, and the experts looked at it and they said, no, it's not broken. You're losing. So they said, well, this thing's obviously broken. So they shut it down. And I think that was in 2011. No, it was 2013, because the time after 2012 is when they really started losing their grip. So they're in denial and desperation, and they're getting more and more brazen. They're getting more and more aggressive as they're losing their grip, and they don't realize they're accelerating their own demise. So we have things like in China, where there's a social credit score. These are all globalist ideas to kind of control the population, and the worse that gets, the more people are just going to slip away from them. And the best way to deal with that is what's been growing at 30% a year, which is off-grid living. People are just saying, I don't need you anymore. I'm going to collect my own rainwater and grow my own food and cooperate with neighbors. I don't need you globalist anymore. You can keep your technology. And so they have no way of staying in control, because people are just not going to put up with it. It's going to get so bad that people are just going to say, that's enough. We're done with you. And they're not going to play their games anymore, or pay the taxes anymore, or play by their rules. So they're losing. But there's going to be some chaos. Nothing that's too nothing that's not survivable. Let's put it that way. If you have the intention to thrive and have prosperity, and you say, it is my intention to have a good life, and no matter how much chaos happens in the country or the area I'm in, I'm going to have prosperity of finance and friendships and good relationships, and I'm going to use my talents to make a meaningful contribution to humanity, and I'm not going to be part of the chaos. Well, guess what? You're not going to be part of the chaos. That's how strong human consciousness is. Whatever you intend to do, if your intention is strong enough, that's what you manifest. So I just tell people not to worry about that too much. We've survived a lot of things. Survived world wars. We've survived plagues, way worse than COVID. Humanity continues. So politics of the future. This is what I've heard from Evan. This is really interesting. And I just shake my head in disbelief when I hear this stuff. They say the politicians of the future are going to rule out of love. They're not going to even call the people running against them an opponent. They're going to call them, my friend and colleague Bob here has these ideas, which I think are good. These are my ideas, and I think it's going to work better, and here's why. And can you imagine that? Because we have a winner-take-all system right now, right? We've got the two sides. They fight each other. One side gets in power and says, well, screw the other side. We're doing it our way now. We're the bosses. Now, the best politicians, those of the future, are going to be the best mediators, moderators, negotiators. They're going to be focused on what we all want. Jobs where we can make a meaningful contribution to humanity. Security, safe streets, clean water, good food, good schools, good infrastructure, hospitals. All these things that both sides really want, that's what they're going to be focused on. And if a politician is not ruled by love, if he's not ruling from a place of love and compassion in his heart, he's not even going to get close to being elected, because the children being born today, they're going to be able to see right through the BS. It's not something we're good at right now. As I get older, sometimes my grandchildren, they say, you're getting older, Grandpa. And I say, yeah, but only for a little while. And I think I told them once, the only thing that gets better with age is my sense of smell. I can smell BS a mile away. The young kids, they're going to have a wisdom where they're not going to fall for the lies and the manipulation that we see in politics and business today. People are going to demand that corporations act with integrity. Now, this blew me away when I heard about this. In the future, corporations are going to advertise based on integrity and honesty. And it's going to be true advertising. Not like today. You got T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon. All of them say, we have the biggest 5G network. Well, you guys are lying. This will be true advertising. They're going to say, look how good we treat our customers and our workers, especially the ones having a problem or in crisis. Look how we leave no trace and treat the environment with respect. Look how we're always so honest. Look at how we price our products fairly and we build them to last. and we build them to be easily repairable and replaceable and upgradable because we care about you. And we don't want you to have to buy the same thing 5 times. It's amazing. I mean, I can't believe that's going to happen. That's the word from heaven. So cooperation based on love is going to replace the cutthroat competition we're seeing today. Now, it's really interesting what I've heard about the future as told in near-death experiences 150 years from now. It's going to be structured similarly to indigenous cultures. There'll be groups of about 100 to 150 people, and you won't see much technology because it's going to be discovered in the future that biology is the best technology. So, for instance, we have these cell phones today that we use to communicate with each other. Advanced species do not have cell phones. They communicate with each other psychically. Imagine, you're sitting with your spouse and your spouse says, well, do you want to invite the kids over for dinner and see, Sure, I'll ask them. You close your eyes, you open your eyes and go, yeah, they said they're coming. That's the world that's coming. We're going to be able to communicate with each other psychically, communicate with animals and plants, and talk to them and learn and grow. And right now, that seems like a horror, being able to read other people's minds and things like that. Well, in a future where people are operating from integrity and compassion and they have nothing to hide, it's not scary. It's not scary at all. In fact, it's beautiful. There's not going to be any doctors in the future. Human beings will learn to talk to their own cellular structure. The body is designed to heal itself. When spirit is in balance, just like whatever on an old movie theater film, whatever's on that film gets projected onto the screen. Whatever's with the soul, whatever's going on with the soul, that gets projected onto the body. And so if the soul is in balance, it projects onto a healthy body. We see this in near-death experience testimonies, don't we? So many people came back, 90 Minutes in Heaven, Don Piper, miraculous fast recoveries. Howard Storm came back, had a miraculous recovery. Well, why did that happen? They were in heaven. Their energy was infused and their consciousness was raised and their vibration was raised and their spirit was rebalanced and they were infused with the love of creation. So they came back and it just did these miraculous healings in their bodies. Now, doctors are aware of this today. They give it a name to make it sound like they understand what's going on, but they don't. They call it spontaneous remission or spontaneous recovery. But there's many documented cases. They don't understand it, but it happens. I remember a story that was in the news many years ago. This young boy, I think he was in his late teens, and he got cancer. And they said, there's nothing we can do for you. You're going to die. You got about a year left to live. And so he decided that for his last year of life, he was going to go out into the world and do good works and not think about death. And so he spent a year just going out and spreading love and kindness and compassion in any way he could. But the thing is, he started getting better. And he went back to the doctors and his cancer was in remission. What happened? He was infusing himself with love. He was raising his vibration and it healed his body. My body healed after 20 years of chronic pain. In 2019, I was in a mobility scooter. I didn't think I'd ever walk like a normal person again. And today I can walk 5-7 miles without a problem. I can work all day out in the yard. I have a little bit of pain in my hands and feet, but it goes away in a couple hours. If I worked 20 minutes or I walked for 10 minutes before, I'd be in pain for a week. I was on pain meds for 20 years and my body healed. It's not natural for a guy in his 50s to heal miraculously. We have the capability to heal ourselves. And those who cannot heal themselves in this future world, if they are incapable of doing it for whatever reason, the community will surround them. And through the power of prayer, they will heal them. No more need for doctors. We will have some advanced technology and some mass manufacturing, not a lot. We're living very simple lives, not complicated like they are today. The remote manufacturing will be done in cities that will be manned by a few people. And We'll have some spaceships where we travel the vast distance of space to visit other planets, but not too much of that. We'll be mostly staying here at home. And some people from their small communities will travel to others to learn. Each community will be focused on something slightly different. Some will be more focused on science, some on nature, and others on spirituality or healing or whatever. Just like today, you got Silicon Valley and you've got an industrial city like this city of industry in California. Yeah, it's just like today, where cities are kind of focused on various things. And that's what it's going to be like in the future. But the entire worldwide culture will be focused on children and teaching them about God and love and nature and science. No one will be afraid of death. Everyone will be aware that death is going home, that death is graduating. It is the most beautiful, love-filled homecoming that anyone could possibly imagine. It would be nothing to fear in the future. Today, some people are terrified of death, but that's not going to be the way it is in the future. And people are going to voluntarily leave their bodies. So we're going to start getting older. People are going to start living longer. The human body was designed to live to be about 900 years old. So those stories in the Bible about Moses and certain biblical characters living to be 800, 900 years old, word from heaven is that really happened. But our consciousness dropped. And so we're dying earlier. Now, what's going to happen, and this has happened on other planets as they spiritually matured, is that people in the old consciousness of fear will still be dying at 80, 85. And people in the new consciousness of love and compassion will start living to be 120, 150, 190. And people scratching their heads going, well, wait a minute. Why are these so? And then they'll figure it out. Oh, they're focusing on these things. We got a little taste of that in COVID, didn't we? This is something I heard from heaven early on in COVID. I heard this in March of 2020. Generations from now, as they look back at the graph of ever increasing human lifespans, there's going to be a dip in average lifespans right around the time of COVID. Now, these are the doctors of 100, 150 years from now. Really good. Imagine doctors 150 years ago and what we know versus today. I mean, they're really going to know their stuff. They're going to be able to account for the damage it did to some people's bodies, to the survivors and all that. They'll be able to account for that. And they're going to be scratching their heads thinking, well, wait a minute, the average lifespan, the damage it did to some people who survived, it shouldn't have dipped that much. And then they're going to realize that fear and anxiety shortened people's lifespans. I mean, every doctor out there knows that stress and anxiety causes premature aging. Look at some of the presidents. They spend 8 years in office and they come out looking 25 years older. Well, it should be obvious to the medical community, I don't think it is, that when we are in a state of happiness or joy or laughter or any expression of love, it actually slows our aging process down. Time flies when you're having fun. Well, why is that? Because less time actually passed. When you're having fun, that's a state of love, you slow your aging process down. When you're doing what you love to do, your aging slows down. When you're in a state of joy, your aging slows down. So as these people in the future are raising their consciousness, their aging is going to slow down. And of course, they're going to be eating a lot healthier. They're not going to be facing all these environmental contaminations, the processed foods, and the electromagnetic frequencies that are bad for us. You know what the Pleiadians call Wi-Fi? Our cosmic parents who are kind of watching over us have had around 2 million years of technology. We've had 200 years. They call Wi-Fi we fry. Yeah. So we don't quite recognize that a lot of stuff we're doing is really bad for us. You know, around the turn of the century, around the early 1900s, when they discovered radium, they thought that anything so energetic must be good for us. So they started putting this radioactive material in hair care products and food products. And of course, people were getting cancer and dying. And then they realized, oh my gosh, this is bad for us. Well, there's a lot of stuff we're doing that's really bad for us. We don't recognize it yet. And as we push those things aside and leave those things in the past, that's going to help us live longer too. So we've got an amazing, beautiful future to look forward to. Don't worry if you're older about missing the grand finale. When we finally become an ascended species, you'll be back. Most of you will be back. You're not going to miss the grand finale. You've been working on this for dozens, maybe some of you hundreds of lifetimes here, trying to bring Earth to this world of love that's coming. And then some other planet is going to be the new kids on the block like we are now. And they're going to have the fear, love duality. And we're going to be the parents, kind of help them out. Right now, we're the kids. We're going through the terrible twos. We're just learning not to fight each other in the sandbox. We haven't gotten to our teenage years yet. That's coming. So we have a lot of maturing. Well, what do we do here and now? Well, we've seen some storms already. Political storms, financial storms. We had the worldwide market crash of 2008. We had COVID. We've had all sorts of stuff, and we always get through it. And there'll be more storms coming along. Don't fear the changes. Stay calm through the whole thing. You know, when there's a storm, I live on top of a mountain in the middle of the woods with my wife in East Texas. And we get these storms, and because we're on a mountaintop, really close to the clouds, and it just rattles the house like crazy. And when lightning hit the tree out front, and my wife gets real scared. Makes me a little nervous too sometimes. There's nothing you can do to calm the storm. You're not going to be able to calm like the rioting we had in 2021. We're going to have more of that. People don't know what to do, go out and riot in the streets. You can't stop that stuff. But what you can do is you can calm yourself, and the storm always passes. Now, the other thing I tell people is if you're serious about spirituality, if you are serious about raising your vibration, about filling your heart with joy and peace on a daily basis, you got to shrink your world. You got to turn off. The news is usually misinformation, and it's usually negative. If you go on to like Google News, I did this and I counted the positive versus negative news stories, it's about 85% negative. Now, some people accuse me of, well, you've got your head in the sand. That's a valid perspective. But my perspective is, no, you're artificially increasing the size of your world through technology. Because 100 years ago, unless it was in the newspaper, you wouldn't even know if there was a war going on 500 miles away. All that constant drumbeat of negativity that the news brings right to the front of our consciousness, to the screens, the laptops and cell phone and TV screens, they take 8 billion people, the worst of the worst of the worst behavior, and they shove it in their faces. There's a lot of good and bad going on in the world. And what we focus on has a huge effect on our level of happiness. And so it's really important, because we're great manifestors, to focus on the positive things. So I tell people, turn off the news. It's poison for the soul. And it was tough when I did it. It was 4 months into the war with Ukraine and Russia when I heard about it secondhand, when I was out in public. It was a week after the election in 2020 when I heard that Trump got elected. 1 week. It didn't make any difference to me. My neighbor's chickens don't know anything about the economy or the president. My garden doesn't care about the interest rates of the banks. None of that matters. I've been working and taking care of my family, and I'm going to continue to do that no matter who's in charge. If you didn't have a TV or communication, most people probably wouldn't know when the president changes. Most wouldn't. So shrinking your world, it's amazing what happens. It's a transformation into peace, because in my world, there's no war. There's no stabbings or shootings or killings. Once in a while, I hear about a robbing, somebody getting robbed. But my world's beautiful and peaceful. What we focus on affects our happiness. So please consider turning off the news. Now, the other thing we can do, and this is something that near-death experiences get told when they get sent back to Earth. I hear this a lot in the testimonies of people I've interviewed. They'll say, go back and change the world. And the person will be like, well, I'm an accountant in a small firm in Boise, Idaho. How do you expect me to change the world exactly? And then those in heaven, they said, oh, no, you don't understand how the change is going to happen. The world is not going to be changed by electing a perfect set of benevolent politicians. They're more screwed up than the rest of us. It's not going to be changed by trying to pass a perfect set of laws, legislating utopia. You know, we've got over 180,000 pages of federal law in this country, tens of thousands of pages of state laws and maritime laws and international monetary fund laws and all these laws on the books trying to legislate utopia. It didn't work. It just made things worse. And the world's not going to be changed by pointing fingers and judging and saying, you guys over there, you're causing the problems. We're going to put you behind bars. Nope. They get explained there in heaven that the world changes by one act of kindness and compassion at a time. You go out into the world, you be the best version of yourself you can be, try and be loving and kind and compassionate, brighten other people's days, and it puts them in a little bit better mood, bring a smile to somebody else's face. They're in a better mood. They're nicer to the people around them. And it's a grassroots movement, ripples out in society. That's how the world changes. And the laws and the culture and business and politics will follow. They don't lead, they follow the consciousness. So humanity and human beings is going to change first, and then the rest, the politics and the governments, they'll change later. Well, we're at 1 hour, 14 minutes. Okay, I think we did pretty well. That opens it up to questions, comments, the part of the presentation where I answer your questions and you question my answers.
All right, everyone was muted before, and we're ready to unmute anybody who has a question. And I'm going to put it on the gallery for the view.
I have a comment.
Sounds like I'm at the baseball field.
Oh my God.
Talking a deep voice, you might sound like the Almighty. Stop watching the news. Maybe type out your question.
Interesting too.
I
don't know.
know who was speaking. Would you raise your hand?
Am.
And are you on the telephone also?
No.
You're on twice. I'll tell you what. Let me try.
Oh, you are.
Pam, say something now. Okay, I can't hear you. Can you unmute on one of your appear
Okay.
twice? Let me see
Can
if
you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
Sort of.
know why you have the echo in the background.
Okay. I'm just going to type this. Okay.
All right, somebody read Pam's comment to me, please, or question, or whatever it is.
Right. I don't see if you can figure that out, Pam. I'm going to mute you from here. Maybe you can unmute your other. Someone else have a question or a comment? Your utopia sounds like the movie Avatar, she asks. Okay, thank you. We got that.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So the modern version of Pocahontas, yes, you will see in Hollywood a lot of ideas being put into the consciousness of humanity to sort of prepare us. So, yes, movie Avatar. Now, it's very interesting. I was interviewing one guy. He had a near-death experience. He was in one of heaven's gardens, and the flowers glow with their own light. And he said it was beautiful. And I said, what, like the movie Avatar? And he laughed and he goes, oh, no, that's nothing. That's a boring garden. Oh, my goodness. So, for instance, Star Trek. When I first started hearing about the Pleiadians, they were talking about the Galactic Federation of Worlds and the Prime Directive and transporters and replicators. And I was going, you morons, you're not even making up a good lie. You're copying Star Trek, you idiots. You know, if you're going to feed me a bunch of garbage, you know, be creative. I later found out through a lot of investigation, oh my gosh, it took me a long time. Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, met with a group of trance channelers in the 1950s, and I got copies of the minutes from one of those meetings. And a few of those trance channelers were channeling Pleiadians. And they gave him the idea of Star Trek because what was the consciousness of humanity with aliens back in the 1950s? They're here to enslave us, conquer us, eat us, steal our resources. Well, we were projecting our barbaric consciousness onto them. 95% of aliens are either benevolent or neutral. We're the barbaric ones. So we were projecting onto them. And they gave that idea to Gene Roddenberry to kind of put the idea into humanity, an alternative positive view of aliens. So it's going to be funny when the Pleiadians show up and they start talking about all this, and everybody's going to be like, they're talking about Star Trek. Are these guys a phony? And they're going to have to tell them, well, no, we talked to Gene Roddenberry. Crazy stuff. Okay.
Right,
Next comment, question?
Comment or a question? I have a comment that I remember one of my favorite movies is The Day the Earth Stood Still. And that was
yes.
way back in the early 1950s, I believe.
Yes, wonderful movie.
Okay.
The remake was horrible. Don't watch the remake.
I didn't know they had a remake. That's good.
Yeah, it flopped.
All right. We plan to post this program, David's presentation, on a website, and we'll let you all know where it is and when. So I thank you. Any last comments? Well, we all thank you, David. It's been great. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure talking with you all. I
Not only
appreciate
for this
being here.
presentation, but for your work, gathering together all this information, interviewing the near-death experiencers, and putting it together in a comprehensive program. It was great.
Thank you, David.
I enjoyed being here. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.